So, experienced foremen can replace engineers? Or ask the wrong question, I should be asking, should experienced foremen continue replacing engineers? Because if you go to the field, let me spill some tea here. This happens a lot. Anyway, nyi mkingoja Erastus Ethocom 2027, mimi nilisha open IEBC server yangu kwa comment section hapa and the results might shock you. But before I jump into that, these two encounters from my many interactions with foremen on ground will make you rethink what you already know. I'll come back to that. First, let me weigh in on this debate which sparked passionate responses with compelling analogies flying. By the way, I really enjoyed reading all your comments, and if you left your comment there, I'm really thankful. I'll just sample a few. Papa OJ demanded foreman to derive a deflection equation. What, Papa? Preston said, a learned foreman beats a foolish engineer any day. I don't know why you said foolish engineer, because if you are an engineer, okay, maybe there are those who are foolish. Young File, I like the way Young File cut through the core, because he said, foreman knows how, engineer know why. Very good way of putting it. Andrew Gitonga said, structural engineer deal with qualified site engineers only. Foreman? Hey, hata wafai kwa hii conversation. What? Anthony Unamachungu. But I like the way you went ahead and brought in a fresh perspective on this issue, because you asked a very important question. Why are counties indemnified against structural failures? Because it is engineers who carry the liability in case of, let's say, a building collapses. They'll not go for the county's official who approved the structural design and everything. They'll go for the engineer who was on that site. So Gitonga said, wacheni mchezo. Made powerful analogies from Leo Samij and Andrew Ikoya, while Sensha, I hope I'm getting the pronunciation right, Sensha dissected the delicate dance between design theory and the real experience on the field. Even Trinity Contractor suggested that fundis can school engineers, and I really agree with that, because we learn from each other in our daily interaction. But Edom Investment Limited, he said, no. In fact, it was a firm no. They cannot replace engineers. Now, come, let's go to the field together. It was in Kisii, and this client had called me. It was months into his project, and the foreman had wanted him to do some adjustment. Why? Because he was worried about slab reinforcement. He especially flagged the fourth slab, and he wanted more reinforcement bar for it. So that meant a higher cost, which made this client to start sweating buckets, and he had to call us. So I cross-checked the structural design and calculation, and I realized there is something here. Guess what? The foreman was right. His experienced eye had spotted a structural oversight that even the softwares could not catch. So we went ahead and effected the changes based on his observation. I want you to compare carefully these actual drawings with the reinforcement spacing on the site. You'll realize that we made some changes. The others engineer structural drawings indicated a 250mm spacing, but we used 200mm spacing. Suppose the foreman was not experienced enough to realize this, and this client was lucky, he would have ended up with something like this. But Engineer Nathan, is that really luck? Well, do you prefer something like this? What I later realized is that the structural design used for this project was actually a copy-paste from another different project. So Nairobi-based engineer was just used as a rubber stamp. Something that do happens a lot. Let me spill some tea here. Many buildings in Kenya are built with foremen acting as engineers. By the way, most of these buildings that collapse in Kenya, if you go and do your research, you'll realize that the engineer was just used on paper, but on the ground, it is foreman was doing everything. That is very dangerous, because you don't want to compromise with the lives of the people. You don't want to compromise with the life of the workers who are working on that, because some of these buildings come down when the workers are still working on the building. Fortunately, the foreman in Kisii actually saved the situation. But in this second case, I want you to listen very carefully. It was in Thika. We arrived only to find the foreman had turned one of the slabs into something that looks like a high-security bomb shelter. The number of reinforcement was insane. So we asked for structural drawings and calculation, and we quickly realized that the engineer had detailed the slab incorrectly. It was just a structural oversight. So when we asked the foreman why he didn't flag this project quite earlier, because that could have saved the client a lot of money, because we had to undo the whole slab. Foreman just said that he assumed reinforcement was supposed to be much, given that the project was also bigger. Apparently, he had never done a project of this magnitude before, and that's why his instincts was to over-reinforce rather than underbuild. It wasn't dangerous, but now the client had to pay it with his pockets. However, in Kisii case, that foreman actually saved life. Now, does this mean a foreman is better than an engineer and can replace an engineer on a project? I don't think so. It means that a seasoned foreman carries a library of structural failures and successes, which sometimes can help him spot errors that even software's model cannot detect. And I always tell this to fresh graduates and students: make a foreman your friend. Foremen are actually professors in boots. They'll teach you something that you were never taught in class. But let's not forget that to become a professional structural engineer in Kenya, it takes about 8 to 10 years of hardcore training, because you'll need 5 years of university education, and that is if Fed does not land you to one of these notorious government universities. I'll not be mentioning names here. After university education, again, you'll need a minimum of 3 years of experience. So that's not playing. That is actually 8 years plus of training, thorough training. And honestly, a competent engineer is expected to know what a foreman knows, what a quantity surveyor knows, what an architect knows. You're also supposed to know the details of construction management. The truth is, this isn't a boxing match. It's not a foreman versus engineer affair. No. It is about collaboration. Anyway, do you still believe that foremen can replace engineers? And if you like this video, please don't forget to click that follow button.